Hi, my name's Eamon McCormick and I'm CTO at Utilicast, and here we will be talking about architecture objectives for innovative companies. The first step on making any good architecture recommendations is understanding what the objectives of the architecture is, and this is particularly challenging for innovation-based companies. The way we recommend one way of looking at this is to look at IT architecture objectives from the context of an equation. This is an objective function. Objective functions are used extensively in many industries, but it allows you to essentially define your objectives in a more scientific way than just lining them up in a spreadsheet. And it is especially useful for understanding what is actually an objective versus a constraint. So here's an example. Architecture objective, this is a version 1, and you'll need to iterate this obviously for your company. But the idea is to state what the objective is. For example, if innovation is what's driving the company, the key objective is to enable a high-level business innovation and agility. So unfortunately, you have to do that while also achieving high availability, scalability, performance, and security, especially true in internet-based businesses. And you have to be subject to key organizational constraints. For example, in most large corporations, you're looking at a federated independent technology organizations, and you are often looking at very complex industry and technology architectures within the organization itself. Architecture objective function 1.0, when you break it down into the variables, would look something like this. So what you do is you take your high-level objective, which is to enable the innovation and agility, and you say, well, what would that look like in terms of variables? Time to market, product types, number of services. The idea there would be that in the ITIL world, you're really very focused on what the business services are. But you also have to achieve high availability, for example, of ATB, which is availability to business, and minimize your failed customer interactions, your FCIs. You also want to look at scalability in terms of transaction volume and your transactions per second, the volume of transactions per second you can throughput, essentially. Performance, time per transaction, and security, of course, which is risk level, which is usually low, medium, high, depending on the industry. For example, in their SIP level, low in the energy industry. And you've got to look at those key constraints. For example, total tech employees is often a drag, especially if it's going to impact a lot of different employees. You've got geographies, organizations, programs, projects, and the number of domains, function points, and unique lines of code that may be impacted or within the organization itself. So how do we go about this? What are the innovation objective function variables? Well, time to market, products released, availability, failed customer interaction, transactions per second, transaction volume, security index, your performance, and then you can put all this together in a scoreboard. So this is basically to indicate the fact that you can take your objective function, you can define it in terms of objectives, constraints, and put it down essentially as a scoreboard. So when you're looking at innovation, you can get a little bit more scientific about exactly how you are going to put points on the board, so to speak, with respect to innovation. So some of the discussion topics relative to this topic. For all innovative companies, you really want to be highly available and highly performed, especially if you're building a big platform of services. So chances are you do not want to be like a static company, like a bank providing stable, predictable services. Reality is that you really want to be both agile and dynamic, and you want to be able to innovate. So then, therefore, you need to achieve your availability, performance, and scalability and security objectives without killing the golden goose of innovating and without violating your key constraints and therefore forfeiting your ability to get where you need to go. So bottom line is you have to accept that it's often pretty difficult to optimize one objective at the cost of another. By definition, the solution space is a compromise. And this is really the key point we're trying to illustrate here, is that the architects must trade off and build consensus solution spaces and allow innovation within those spaces. There is no optimal answer. These are complex problems, and there is no absolute truth, just a region of solution space that works for innovative companies. Hope hopefully we will talk to you soon, and thanks for listening.